me like literally a whole business and having to do it over again with my second to be, so also about 4 years to really find that bridge and go like, okay, this is what I want. And this is also the kind of athlete I want my boys to see me as, not the one who has to go to the gym or who has to measure everything or who can't have that ice cream on a Tuesday. Like, I don't want that. And that's okay if that's what other people want. But like, I know I want the freedom to be as healthy and fit as I can, while also genuinely just being able to show up and live with them and have them do this with me.
Hi, guys, and welcome back to the Thick Thighs Save Lives podcast. I'm Rachel.
And I'm Kelsey.
We have an amazing guest for you today for all of the burning postpartum, pregnancy, fitness, everything you need to know about just woman shit. And she is such an amazing resource with so many. I'm so inspired by your story, Brianna. I read your bio and just I don't know, just the way that you got to this place of helping women was so inspirational to me and also extremely familiar. So I think a lot of people are going to hear themselves in you and your story. And I just want to thank you, first of all, for being here.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here and share as much as I possibly can.
So, reading about, your background and your pregnancy and your birth experience was just all the feels. And I just wanted to give you an opportunity to tell our listeners about your journey and how it led you here and your passion, of helping women after what you went through.
Sure. Well, I'm Brianna Battles, and I'm the founder of Pregnancy and Postpartum Athleticism. And that came about because my background in college was kinesiology, exercise physiology, got my master's degree in coaching, and I spent the first, 5 to 10 years of my career in strength and conditioning, from collegiate athletics to personal training to corporate wellness to like just a lot of different areas within the fitness industry, and was also an athlete. Like, I played sports in college. I, after that was really involved in triathlons and then CrossFit and then running, like all the different things. So when I got pregnant 9 years ago, I really gravitated towards the, you were made for this. Just keep doing what you've always done. You're a badass, train for birth. Because back then there wasn't a lot of information available. There was, don't lift over 20 pounds, or there was, do what you've always done. And, when you are an athlete and you have what I like to call athlete brain, you're going to gravitate towards the pushing boundaries, where we are sort of used to leading with our ego instead of knowing how to adjust our training and our overall mental and physical approach to different seasons in our life. And something I talk about a lot now is athletic maturity, but that doesn't come without having to really reassess like what your body needs for where it's at right now. And there's nothing like motherhood to just really kind of ground you a little bit, but I fought that so hard. So during my pregnancy, I trained pretty hard. I wanted to maintain. I thought that it would almost guarantee an easier birth, an easier postpartum recovery. And that was just not the case for me. I ended up having an emergency C-section, and everything just felt hard from the actual like pregnancy. It just like was huge, and it didn't matter how hard I exercised. I just grew like I just grow really big babies. I have had 2 10-pound boys. So rude because I'm like 5'2". But like that experience of like how I approached training during pregnancy, what my birth experience was like, and then my postpartum recovery, which was just fueled by, I am so anxious, I'm so depressed, I feel like such a failure, and I wanted to use exercise as a tool because that was really one of my only tools back then to feel better about myself. Well, at least I can like not look like I had a baby. I don't want to look like a mom. And that's such gross messaging, but that was, really like that was just so much of my motivation back then. So I ended up like losing all the weight, and that was fine. I wasn't fine, but my body seemed fine until it didn't. Like I had a pretty significant diastasis, which is the natural separation of the left and right sides of your abdominal wall, where the connective tissue of your midline spreads to accommodate the growth of the baby. Well, I had a 10-pound baby. Like there was just a lot of separation there. For me, it was about, I think it was about 8 centimeters when I first discovered, like, why do my abs not look like they used to? I trained through pregnancy. I've lost all this weight. It's not just skin or stretch marks. It's like there's something weird feeling and looking about my abs. And that kind of lit up my background in strength and conditioning and anatomy and physiology, and really trying to understand like what has changed. And again, back then on social media and any kind of front facing outlets, there was no information on diastasis. Now it's crammed down our throats, usually in like ridiculous, not helpful ways. But back then, there just wasn't any information. And so it took a lot of literally years trying to figure out um, what this was, what to do, who to learn from, and how to implement it to my own training and in my coaching. And that really helped catapult so much of the work that I have done now. And I've walked that path personally. I've walked it professionally, and now I've coached thousands of athletes around the world, and a handful of professional athletes to just help them navigate these seasons in their lifetime of athleticism, because our it doesn't end when we become moms. Go get the yogurt. Hold on. Sorry.
Speaking of being moms and it not ending.
Being a mom. That was a beautiful segue into
Yeah,
someone needs
I
yogurt.
told him, I was like, if my door is closed and you wake up, you need to get your yogurt and then go wake up your brother so he can turn on the TV. This is summer mom life for me. Is I'm trying. Usually they sleep a little longer, but of course not today.
I'm here
not
for
today,
it.
not while you're recording.
My bad, guys.
No, you're totally
Don't
fine.
even. Don't
When
you
we
dare.
have a mom podcast and we're talking about being a mom, I feel like it's only right to have like a child interruption.
It's like inauthentic if you're not interrupted by a child. It's like, are you really? Let me see them. Let me see those kids.
I'm like, mommy. I'm like, no.
Not now.
Anyway,
well,
so
I
that
just
is
love
what,
that.
that is what really kind of connected the dots for my own personal experience as an athlete, my own personal experience as a coach, my own personal experience as becoming a mom, and then being a mom who wanted to still identify as an athlete like I am. That did not end at 22 or 25 or 30 or onwards. So we needed better information because there was no information 9 years ago.
Yeah, it's wild that there isn't that information, and then it just becomes conflicting information. Like you can see it all over the internet where it's like, okay, don't lift over 20 pounds, or keep training but not training that much, or like anything but listen to what is specific for you and
Right.
you decide. So that's just wild. The next thing I wanted to talk about was that you mentioned in your bio the pressure of what was right and what was best during your pregnancy, birth, and postpartum experience. Most importantly, later realizing how harmful and elitist that mindset was. Can you speak about this and like what it looked like for you and how you came out the other side?
Yeah. Okay, so again, like 9 years ago, I was like super CrossFitty, paleo, and just like really into, I wanted a natural birth. I wanted to be as fit as possible. I wanted to have like, I just had this like idea of motherhood that was so healthy, right? But only healthy through a very specific lens versus what was actually going to be healthy for me and the baby that I was given, right? And motherhood makes you be adaptable, but when you're really rigid and stuck in these belief systems about what constitutes the best pregnancy or the best birth experience or the right way to have a baby or the right way to do all these things, like it's just incredibly dogmatic, and that can bring about a lot of shame, and that is so difficult for people. And I feel like the health and fitness industry really does that, um, you know unfortunately. Like it shouldn't be that way. In our effort to empower, we're then shaming so many people who don't fall in that exact experience. And so now a huge cornerstone of my business is I don't care how you have a baby or the choices you make as a mom. Like, I want to support you in the lens in the way that I can, which is your fitness and how you approach your fitness and this season mentally, physically, and emotionally to set you up for a lifetime of athleticism. Because there's so many people who say, like, I wish I would have known. I was so hyper focused on getting my body back, or I was so hyper focused on everything I could do to not give formula, or I was so hyper focused on having this kind of birth that anything outside of that, if it didn't go that way, I just felt like a failure. And that's not how any of us should have to enter motherhood.
I'm going to try to make it through this whole podcast without crying, because I'm just like, I've never actually heard someone that is a stranger tell my story back to me as if they were me. And I just want to tell you, Kelsey, first of all, Kelsey does not have any children, but she hopes to be a mom one day. And I just want to tell you how incredibly lucky you are to be able to hear this, because I just never heard any of this. And I had so much pressure to be like misfit pregnant. And
Right.
I literally remember I also had an emergency C-section when I was supposed to be the fittest, most amazing natural birth ever in my mind. And I actually remember apologizing to my midwife and saying, I'm sorry, I'm ruining do you remember me saying this?
Yeah.
I said, I'm sorry, I'm ruining your statistics, because she was like, 98% of my people have natural births. And that's why I went with her. And I apologized to her on the operating table because I was ruining her.
And you should never feel like that, right? You should never feel like you're letting somebody down, because you already feel like that yourself. And that's what I'm saying. Like, that experience, when we go in with these like rigid belief systems about like what is right or best or like healthiest, like it's so unfair to enter such a amazing season and amazing moment feeling so shamey and shitty, and like you're letting others down because you're already feeling like you've done something wrong. But there's so much about birth that is not within our control. It's just not. You can be the healthiest, fittest, whatever. You can do all the right things, know all of the things, and there's just variables that are outside of our control. And that's what I wish, and I try to work really hard to bring to like a conversation to the table, is like, we just have to go in as informed as possible and as adaptable as possible. And athletes, we like to think we're adaptable, but no, we are freaking structured. We are rigid. We are like, if I do this and this is the result I'm going to get in 6 weeks or in 8 weeks or whatever, if I put in the work, then I'm going to get the result. That is not how motherhood works. And that is why we have to approach these seasons differently than how we've approached our training and almost like our mindset leading into that chapter, if the goal is to pursue everything beyond this.
It's just, there's so much unlearning, specifically for athletic type A type of personalities, where everything that has led you to be successful to this point, just like none of that, none of that. And then also, you bring this baby home and it actually isn't, the baby that you designed in your mind. It's actually just
talking.
So human. Like then there is the entire like, I literally almost starved my son to death trying to breastfeed him when there was no milk to breastfeed him with. And I blamed myself and ate lactation recipes and all lived in this world of shame and anxiety. And I think about that now and how I missed so much of so many beautiful times just in that shit show. It's just a shame.
No, I feel the same. Like, I feel like there's so much that I missed out on at least like the first 6 to like 9 months of his life. I was so deep in like just trying to survive and recover. And then I was so focused on like, well, if I can't control all these things, I can control how, like, my body, I can control my training. I can be like that poster child then. If I like screwed up all of these things, You know, and then same thing. I was like, breastfeeding was so hard. It was supposed to be natural. It was supposed to be like what you do that was healthy. And like, God forbid I gave him formula because that was just another thing to fail at. Which now, like, I look back on that, I'm like, oh my God, I was like such an idiot. But like, first time mom, and so caught up in that dogmatic stuff that I was like, I cannot fail at one more thing. I can't. I cannot fail at yet another thing that I was like really determined to do. And again, if you haven't been in that yet, it's hard to see like, well, why wouldn't you just give them formula, or why wouldn't you just like, okay, I had that kind of birth and whatever. But we get so married to these expectations of what we thought we would be doing, who we thought we would be, what we thought our experience was going to be, that we cannot actually zoom into where we are now, you know? And like, and that's hard. And we have our lifetime to know better now, to just do it differently. Like, that's the gift of motherhood, is like our babies love us anyway. Like they know that we were trying our best with the information we had at the time, with the maturity we had at the time. Like it's hard to adjust. And then I've gone on to have a second baby who I kind of call my miracle baby, because I really wasn't sure if I was going to have another one after that. And the like wisdom and perspective that I took into my next pregnancy and into my next birth experience and into my next, like, how I wanted to experience motherhood was so rewarding. And we almost get those second opportunities and ways to just, hey, collect the information we have and do better the next time. And that's what we're doing here.
And literally using your voice and platform to propel that message so that less people have to feel like that, or
Right.
that is just the ultimate gift that you could ever give anybody, because
Right.
like you said, you were surrounded in a world that was saying all of these messages and there was no counter message to that, and it just is so lonely when that happens.
It's really lonely. And then to extend the conversation even further, this isn't feelings and experiences that are just reserved for people who maybe didn't get the birth experience that they wanted, or, you know, breastfeeding. But like, we can zoom into like their bodies. Like, well, they didn't know about diastasis, or now they're peeing their pants every time they sneeze, or when they do a box jump, or when they run, or they have prolapse and they're like, is my vagina broken? What is going on here? And there's so many things that we haven't been taught about our bodies, especially as female athletes. And it takes pregnancy and birth and motherhood to educate us. Like, that shouldn't be the case either, because we're already having to worry about breastfeeding and nap schedules and this and that. Like, we are inundated with a lot of things. So then to feel like we don't understand what's happening with our body either, like, that's an extra layer of shame and confusion and like tasks that we shouldn't have to do. We shouldn't be Googling, is this normal? What does this look like? And like, people literally like Google vaginas to try to see, like, is this what my vagina should look like? You know, like, and those are the DMs I get, is like, does this look normal? And I'm like, man, I just never thought my career in strength and conditioning would lead to these kind of DMs. But here we are, because people are desperate for validation and information that they're not necessarily getting from their OBGYN or from their midwife or from their sister or whoever. So who do they have? Not a lot of people. And that's really why, like, I knew I needed to try to create like a team of pregnancy and postpartum athleticism coaches to at least be like the catchers, right? Like, they're there to field and refer and to help guide a lot of these seasons, because it is so overwhelming to navigate all the different variables that are thrown at you during those seasons as a female athlete.
I love that. And I, just even the thought that something like that would be out there, it's just like you leave and they go, here's the baby, and off you go.
Right.
Like, now I am like appalled at the postpartum care that I received after having like an abdominal surgery. I remember like later being in a doctor's appointment and them saying, any major abdominal surgeries? And I said, no. And then I was like, oh, wait, sorry. Yes, I did have a C-section. And literally a male doctor said, oh no, we don't count that. Yeah. And I was like, no, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes total sense. Like, I went home with no PT, like we just ignored that this all happened. And I really think that I want to spend some time on, because there are so many things to debunk, and
Yeah.
we have like you here and you're a wealth of knowledge. Like, I want to like rapid fire question you
Yeah.
some
Do
of
it.
the most common ones, just so that people can feel that they have some tools.
Yeah.
Okay, first, let's start. I just found out I'm pregnant. Is it safe to maintain a similar level of exercise that I had prior to this? Or should I be lowering weight intensity, changing movements? What's happening?
Yeah. So again, it comes back to like learning how to be adaptable. And I think that pregnancy is a great time to adapt that training and to become really educated on your body and why it should change. You don't need to be maintaining through pregnancy because your body is not maintaining, right? You're not in a season of maintenance. You're in a season of change, period. And there's no fighting that change. And if you do, like that's a whole other series of problems to consider, right? Like that's just, it's a whole other thing that we can talk about that later. But absolutely have to be willing to adjust your load, your volume, your intensity, even like how frequently you're working out. You can stay in the same environment that you enjoy. If you like to do CrossFit, or if you like to, like if whatever you like to do, you can still stay in that environment, but how you approach your training in that environment is what matters because your body is changing significantly.
Yeah, that's some great advice with some of these like answers. I love that you put it in a way of like athletic maturity,
Yeah.
because sometimes we don't put that as high on a pedestal as really where it should be, because like we're oftentimes, even if you're not pregnant, going through seasons of change where you have to make adjustments for your body.
Right.
Like
Yeah,
you
this
just
isn't
do.
just like it. This isn't
Yeah.
just a pregnancy and postpartum conversation. This
No.
is
Well,
sickness.
that's
This
how it
is
felt for
injury.
me.
This is life event. This is.
Yeah.
There are so many variables, and I think just with getting older, like I'm in my 30s, like maybe my 20s, I could get away with a lot of shit.
Yeah.
Like I didn't have as many responsibilities. I wasn't running a business. I didn't have kids. Like things were just different. And then now, like things are changing. We move. We have this. We have that. Like surgeries. There's just events that occur, and for a lot of people, pregnancy and postpartum is like their first significant event. The first thing that like sits their ass down and says things are different right now, and they're gonna keep being different, and you will adapt, but the more you fight it, the more it's gonna kick your ass. And like a lot of people maybe experience that prior, but I think there's this huge population of female athletes that don't experience like the need to adjust, and they try to like really hold on and maintain because they don't recognize that yet. They don't recognize it until they have to recognize it. So I think if we can get this information and say like, if you want to be an athlete for the rest of your life,
Yeah.
even if it looks different than the athlete you are now, if you want to be that active grandma or the grandma deadlifting or whatever, like then how you navigate all these different seasons really matters. That
That
approach,
is
that
so
mental,
true.
spiritual, emotional, physical approach, like that is what matters. So take it as a learning opportunity to reassess what you do and why you're doing it. Are you just working out so that you can have like really lean abs? Sorry, like that is not a guarantee forever. And so, like, what are your other motivations? Right? Like, why are you actually working out? Because if it's just connected to your performance and your aesthetics, we have to find another reason
Yeah.
because that will disappoint you eventually.
It does. It does.
And just,
I
Hard
This
truth.
is just like so relatable to me, not being a mom, because like you go through different changes where you're like, I am an athlete. I need to just plow through these like different things I'm feeling with my body or injuries or like whatever, and that I'll just get to the other side because I'm not that old, right? And it's like,
right.
no, I have to adjust my training right now because I'm continuously getting hurt.
Right.
And like that's just the fact of life. And if you want to continue being an athlete, the only way to do that is to actually listen to your body.
Yeah. And you have to do it differently through different seasons. Like what I was doing, like at 25 is not what I'm doing at 35 necessarily, but like I'm actually a better, well-rounded athlete now, and like that is such a blessing. Like that, it's a blessing to be able to evolve what you do, how you do it, and most importantly, like why you're doing it. And that's why like there's just these different seasons of athleticism that we can learn so much from. You learn a lot about your body, and you can learn more about like who do I want to be as an athlete? I don't want to be somebody who's obsessed with my macros, obsessed with my protein, obsessed with being in the gym X amount of days a week, obsessed with hitting this percent on my lifts. Like, I just want to enjoy what I do and what I'm like, why I'm doing it. Like, I just want to enjoy my fitness without it being attached to a certain result. Like, we can be process driven and still be in the game without having to have a really rigid game.
Dude, game changer.
I love that.
Game changer. Freak it. When you can like fully accept that, drink it in, and really like drink the Kool-Aid on that, I swear to God, your life starts changing, because I literally have just now started to drink that Kool-Aid, and I can't even tell you the amount of pressure that has been taken
there
off
is so
of
much
my fitness.
Freedom on the other side of rigidity.
Great. Oh,
and
great.
that is hard for female athletes to cross. Like, but there is a bridge, and I feel like the bridge is like appears around that pregnancy and postpartum if we are willing to go across it. But some people are trying to run the other way. But like, the bridge is there anyway. Like, the only way to move forward, there is no going back. You're not bouncing back, but like, you will go over the bridge.
Bouncing back.
And the more you fight it, like, the harder it's gonna hit. So you have to you walk at your own pace, and you'll find that eventually. But there's a lot of freedom where you can still be a great athlete, and you can do it in a way that is sustainable and, just appropriate for where you're at in your life right now. And it can be better. It doesn't mean that your fitness is going to be lame. It doesn't mean you're going to be like less of an athlete, or you're not going to like look fit again. It's just, it's not going to be the same, but it can be better. And no matter what, it will be different. And that different doesn't have to be bad.
Yeah. And you get to like do it with your like best humans that you made. And they're sitting there and just like, you're like, hey, you guys are here. I made you. And now I'm this person. And this is like, it's different, but it can be better. That's a really hopeful thing. I walked for 4 years. I just found the bridge. It's just, it took me 4 years. I'm a slow walker.
That's okay. It took me like literally a whole business and having to do it over again with my second to be, so also about 4 years to really find that bridge and go like, okay, this is what I want. And this is also the kind of athlete I want my boys to see me as, not the one who has to go to the gym or who has to measure everything or who can't have that ice cream on a Tuesday. Like, I don't want that. And that's okay if that's what other people want. But like, I know I want the freedom to be as healthy and fit as I can, while also genuinely just being able to show up and live with them and have them do this with me.
Let's go. Rapid fire. Is it a thing that we need to be monitoring our heart rate when exercising pregnant?
No, it's super outdated, unfortunately, but it just won't die. So there was like the don't get your heart rate over 140 beats per minute. Super, like literally, I think 15 years outdated. So like we're way beyond this, but you don't want to be working out to the point of exhaustion. So like all my CrossFitty friends, like where you just like want to rip your shirt off and fall on the floor and like lay there and let your sweat seep in. Like, you're not trying to work out to that intensity during pregnancy. Again, like what is your motivation? What's the motivation right now? The motivation is not intensity. The motivation is not how much can I lift. The motivation is not how hard can I push. The motivation is, am I able to show up and work hard enough without working out to a point where there's like not a lot of return on it, like there's just different reasons for working out. You can still get in a good workout without having to like kick your own ass.
Yeah, that's great information for everyone to hear, because you
one more time for the people in the back.
I still get that. I'm like, this is just keeps living on every time.
So I like to say, like, you want to get breathy, but not experience breathlessness. It's always a hard thing for me to say. So you can be breathy, you can be like out of breath, but not like where you're just panting, exhausted on the floor like that. Like, you can still work hard. You're just not working out. Like, again, why am I here? What am I trying to accomplish? What is my reason for training right now? To be as healthy and fit as possible, not to be as badass as possible, not to be who I was before getting pregnant. Like, you are a different human right now. So train like the human you are right now. Don't let your ego take over, because that will turn on you.
True.
Yes, it will.
Is it possible to damage your abdominals during pregnancy from exercise, or is diastasis something that is out of our control because it's based on things like genetics, size of baby, your anatomy? What's your thoughts on that?
Yes, to both. It is going to occur in all pregnancies because it's an adaptation our body experiences to accommodate the growth of the baby. Like it is 100% normal. Any program or person that tells you can prevent diastasis is really off base. That's not true. What we can do is, again, within the ways we can control, we can make some adjustments to our training through exercise, through how we manage a lot of intra-abdominal pressure, through some of our range of motion, positional, postural considerations. We can try to manage how much added stress goes on the midline. And we can do that with exercise, with just teaching new ways to train, new ways to adjust our breathing, new ways to adjust some of those positions. And then diastasis and the pelvic floor are best friends. So anytime we talk about diastasis, it's really the same kind of lens as talking about pelvic floor, because pelvic floor also is bearing a lot of load during pregnancy and will experience trauma during birth. So how we adjust our training during pregnancy is really critical for almost like a prehab sort of experience where you're training in a way where it's not about set exercises. It's about a different approach to how you've traditionally been taught to do things. If you've always sort of braced and held tension and sucked in your abs and like a lot of squeezing and a lot of just whatever, like all of us, right? We've been raised in a culture of like sucking in our stomach, or if we're going to lift, then we're just bracing out into the belt or just trying to create a lot of pressure there. It's not appropriate for pregnancy and postpartum when that pressure system is accommodating a baby or recovering from accommodating a baby.
I remember thinking when I learned it was a very, very long road to figuring out what was wrong with my that I had diastasis and why it was causing me all of these problems and pain. Because of course, nobody.
Right.
I mean, I had like a literal 6-month-old, and people were like, "I don't know, back pain. I don't
Yeah.
know, maybe something with your spine. I don't."
Yeah. Oh yeah. So many
You can
people have
see
back
you.
pain and they're told it's just normal. It's just normal. All of that.
I um I remember thinking when I got hip to some of the breath work to distributing the pressure more evenly, I remember thinking, if I had known this when I was pregnant, this would have been really helpful when I was trying to front squat PRs
Yeah.
and bracing in a totally, now I realize, inappropriate way.
Right.
And I love that you introduced the idea of prehab, because like learning those things after the fact is great and it's super helpful. But if you have had time to practice them when you were pregnant, I just think that you understand them so much more and you have
Yeah.
so much more practice that they become like second nature in postpartum. And that's like the
Yeah.
dream story. That's like where you want to be.
Exactly. Exactly. And like that's what we have now. So I don't the sentiment of I wish I would have known or why didn't anyone tell me, like that's it's just it's so sad to me, because we do have this information now. Like it
Mhm.
is available, but it's so hard to sort through all the social media experts to know like, well, what's actually relatable to me? What do I need to know? Um and so I think there's a lot that we like. Exercise is a tool. If I tell you to just do these like boring rehab movements, there's not a lot of buy in there for female athletes. But if I can integrate it into the exercise they're already doing and just say, so when they are front squatting or when they are kettlebell swinging or when they are doing their inverted rows, they're like, okay, I know like my body position needs to be like this. And I know that I need to exhale here or maybe inhale here. Or now that I'm in my third trimester, maybe I'm going to exhale through the full range of motion. I feel a lot more support in my vagina. I feel a lot more support in my midline. Cool. Where they have that own education and they know how to listen to their body, because everyone will tell you just listen to your body. You have no freaking clue what to listen for though, because your body is changing. Your body is not even yours right now. Like there's so many variables there. But if we can make that adjustment so they have that information, they know it early on in pregnancy, they understand what their body is going through and changing. And again, it's not bad. It just is. Then, that sets them up for a better, like most importantly, a better mental experience postpartum, because then they're not having to search and say like, Is this normal? They just know what to expect. And they also understand process. If they know that stuff during pregnancy and they're practicing it then they know that this isn't a magical, like in 6 to 8 weeks, I'm just going to be healed and ready to go. They know that they are in it and restructuring and changing their approach. So then they can have a little bit more freedom and flexibility in their approach after they've rebuilt that foundation. And I think like that's the message we have to sell is it's not like you become a smarter athlete. You understand your body in a whole different way, and that's going to keep serving you. And it's going to give you the freedom to do a variety of things. Like if you're doing CrossFit now, like maybe you're not going to be doing CrossFit in 10 years, but maybe you're going to be able to take the tools that you have as an athlete and that you've learned about your body and let that carry over into whatever kind of fitness you do. Like I'm doing jiu-jitsu now. I never was doing that. And that was not on my radar back then. But now I have such a like great understanding of my body. And it's because of everything I've done prior, you know, like I really understand my tension. I understand pressure. I understand these movement patterns. And it's because we get this practice and this whole opportunity to really learn your body in a new intimate way. And then that's going to help us in perimenopause and menopause. And as we get older and we're not just being told that peeing your pants is normal as your hormones change or prolapse and oh yeah, your organs shift and there's nothing you can do about it. Like that's not okay. And there's so many women in their 50s and beyond that are experiencing a lot of changes and they didn't know what was normal or not or what the resources were. And we're in this generation of like kind of millennial women ish who are saying, actually, we can do something about it. There's a lot I can do during these seasons. And again, pregnancy and postpartum are great catalysts for how we understand our bodies as female athletes for the remainder of our lifetime.
Imagine reframing it as something that is like giving to you, giving you knowledge that you can take forward instead of something that took everything away from you. Like that reframe is like, yes, I'm here for it. Yes, I'm here for it.
Exactly.
Okay. You touched on this a little bit, but is there a set amount of time that we should be waiting after birth to begin exercising again?
I know this question. Yes. And you're not ready for normal, but you also can do some things. Exercise is not what you're going to traditionally look at it as being exercise. Do you have to wait till you're cleared to do something? No, you can do some rehab exercises. You can do like basic walking and movement for your mental health and getting out there. But I think that jumping back into your class or going on a 3-mile run, like that is not where you start. That is what you build to during your, that 4th trimester. Like the first 3 to 4 months postpartum is like so rehabby, so much basic fitness, so much just understanding your new body. And most importantly, adjusting to your new life. Your exercise routine is not going to be what it was at all because you have a baby to care for, a body that is healing tremendously from the inside out. There's a lot to take into consideration where I feel like most people aren't really finding their rhythm again with any kind of exercise routine until that 3 to 4 month mark, because everything prior to that is like very basic rehab exercises, meeting with a pelvic floor physical therapist if possible, working through a postpartum program like mine, like is technically, to start around that 4 to 6 week mark. But again, it's very rehabby. And then it builds into some more fitness. And then we're like making it feel a little bit more familiar of like a training routine. But that's over an 8-week span. That's 2 months, right? Like we have to, again, reframe what it means to get back into exercise and allow our bodies time to rest and heal and use movement appropriately. Not, I think that people use it desperately a lot of times. I was absolutely one of those people. I just want to feel like myself again. I just want to do something that feels familiar again. I just want to like lose this weight. So if I like run and if I do this and I do these exercises, then that's going to help my abs look better. That's going to help my body fat go down. And oh, I don't want to eat this. I don't want to do that. It's too consuming to be that obsessed with your body. And it's already like super, this is me going on a tangent. Sorry. But it's really triggering for like eating disorders, body dysmorphia, anything that you've ever experienced or even like almost experienced the extent of. Postpartum is a super triggering time for that. So we have to be extremely cautious with how we use exercise, and it needs to serve us, not steal from us.
Oh man.
I love that you use desperate for that, because that like really resonates with a lot of the like feedback that I get from other women, or just the general feeling on like get your body back, bounce back from pregnancy, all these kind of like phrases that we hear targeted at women over and over, of like how they can get back to something that they were before they had another human to care for and had a totally different life. It's like so weird. It's like really bizarre, but it is kind of a desperate approach where it can be serving you. It's
Yeah.
possible for it to serve you, but it
Yeah.
has to be approached in the right way.
Yeah, and I've worked with so many different athletes now, like really high level athletes whose their job is to perform, right? But then I've worked with a ton of recreational athletes, and what's interesting is the high level athletes aren't desperate to get back, even though they have the most motivation to, like they have the most on the line. They are the ones who are like, I am good at trusting this process. I know that it's not like your result doesn't come back quickly. It comes from putting in a lot of work and freaking peaking at the right time. Peaking at the right time. We know this, right? Like we know this with periodization, progressive overload, and somehow that just gets totally dismissed when we talk to a lot of athlete moms. They think that they're exempt. Like, well, this doesn't apply to me. I was fit before, I was fit during, and I've never worked with somebody who's like, God, I really regret taking my time getting back into things. No one has ever said that to me. No one. And pretty much weekly, I hear different sentiments of like, I wish I would have just like taken a little bit more time, or I wish I wouldn't have rushed this, or I wish I wouldn't have tried that, where there's this sentiment of regret, or they wish they would have done something differently. And now I don't, there's so many variables that are outside of our control. So, and I don't think anyone should live in that shame cycle of I should have done this different or whatever. But I think when we can get in front of pregnant athletes and say to them, like, there is no rush. I promise you, as slow as it seems initially, it is the freaking fastest season of your life, and you will do what you want to do again. It might look differently, but just be freaking patient. And I promise that patience will give you way more reward than rushing the process ever will.
That's if we could tell everyone.
I'm really glad too that you mentioned the aspect of it that because I wasn't really body shame driven. I wasn't like I have to get my flat abs or any.
Mm-hmm.
Why I was overdoing it was because I was desperate to feel normal and like myself again. And swinging a kettlebell and front squatting and doing those things felt normal, and being told to walk as exercise felt very abnormal. And I just was so hot to just be like, none of this feels like me. And I know where I feel like me.
Right.
And it's at the gym.
Yeah.
That's the only place. So I have to go there. I went there. I went twice a day with a little tiny 4-month-old baby. I was doing 2 a days just to go someplace where I felt like Rachel and not mom, or like this weird pseudo mom wannabe, like you don't actually know what you're doing, so just get out of here. And I'm just really glad that you mentioned that, because there are so many driving factors behind why we rush back in. And I think that that is one that people kind of overlook, that like, that body image one is definitely very common. And I think that's one we all recognize. And then the other ones are just, I think also should be recognized. Anyways.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's a huge shift in our identity. And I think that definitely gets looked over because, again, especially like for all moms and anyone who identifies like as an athlete, our identity is attached to that routine, to that aesthetic, to our performance, to where we feel like ourselves. And when you become a mom, you're like, but I'm still that. And we want to go back to that. Like we want to have that identity. And so that's why it totally makes sense that you went to the gym to feel like yourself again. And let's also talk to our female athletes and say, your identity is fluid. It is not rigid. It will change with you. for your life, if you want to stay in the game as an athlete, it has to be fluid. And that's why that athletic maturity can come into play. So we can say you might really want to go back to the gym and do 2-a-days. And who are you becoming that's not attached to the gym? Who are you without the gym? And can we really work on who you are outside of this athlete identity? Because now you are not who you were. You're not, and that can be really hard. You are still someone who can be in the gym. You're still somebody who can perform. You're still somebody who loves exercise and values that. And you're somebody who is in a significant transitional season, and you're about to discover who you are becoming.
It's so cool. It's such a cool possibility to put that in front of new moms, because it just offers, an alternate road. If you want it, here it is.
Yeah.
Let's talk about common and not normal.
Yeah.
As far as diastasis, as far as bladder, performance, as far as prolapse and pelvic floor, can we talk about the fact that there are a lot of things that people say are this is just what happens after you have a baby. That's just what your stomach looks like. You just have back pain. That's just a normal thing. You just leak all the time. It's, when you sneeze, you had a baby. That's what happens.
Yeah.
How many of these things are things that we should expect, and how many of these things are things that we should be looking to work on in PT?
Yeah. All of those things are expected, and all of those things can be improved. And I think that is, it really simplifies that, right? Like, your abs have changed. Structurally, they have changed. That connective tissue has stretched a lot to accommodate that baby. Exercise can help our symptoms, or it can aggravate symptoms. So let's use exercise as a helpful tool, and not a tool that kind of like sabotages, or we don't really understand like how to leverage it, right? So that can be symptoms like prolapse, or and that is just, it feels like there's like a tampon falling out is what prolapse symptoms feel like for a lot of people, or like a lot of pressure, or just like something's falling out of my vagina. Like, those are typically the DMs that I get. Incontinence can feel like you have to pee all the time, or maybe you sneeze and you pee, or you run and you pee, or just like you get that urge to pee. And that can involve like fecal incontinence too, which is also like not talked about. Certainly nothing I ever thought I would be talking about as a strength and conditioning coach. And again, this career path is so interesting for me. And then like all of these symptoms are extremely common, and we have the resources to help through practitioners like pelvic floor physical therapists, and through anyone who's gone through my certification program. Like, they know how to use exercise as a tool to help with some of those symptoms, both proactively and in a rehabilitative perspective.
Yeah, I think it's really important to talk about with the bladder too. I think a lot of women they're like, well, that just happens when you have a baby, and they just move on. Like, what should it is part of the rehab? Like, what should women be expecting from their pelvic floor?
Typically postpartum, when you are 4 to 6 weeks postpartum, you can go, and even before that, you can have an assessment from a pelvic floor physical therapist. Depending on how far out postpartum you are, it might just be, they won't do an internal assessment, and they can just kind of help dial in some of your breathing and rehabilitative movements. And all of this is with the focus of the brain. Like, we need your brain to be retrained to feel connected to your body. It is not like I'm doing these exercises and my muscles are going to get stronger. That's not rehab. Rehab is neuromuscular. Like, you have to get your brain understanding and reconnected to these parts of your body that maybe it's never even like paid attention to before. Like, no, when I was first learning this stuff, I was like, what does my vagina have to do with anything with my abs? Like, I did not understand that at all. And you hear Kegels, but like no one really does those right. And you think like we'll just like squeeze. But most female athletes don't need even tighter pelvic floors. They need to know how to like relax their shit. Like, literally, like, we all grip our abs or squeeze our glutes, and that just sort of contracts the pelvic floor. And that can really lead to a lot of symptoms, whether you've had a baby or not. That's why we see so many female athletes pee, like coming out of the bottom of a heavy squat or doing
Under
double
load,
unders,
yeah.
whatever.
Mhm.
It's not just because, it has nothing to do necessarily with having a baby. Again, motherhood can just sort of bring out a lot of these vulnerabilities. So that's what you can expect early on with pelvic floor physical therapy is using exercise and certain rehab movements to retrain your brain to connect to that part of your body, to know how to really lengthen and how to contract appropriately. It is about coordination, not strength. That coordination is very hard for us to understand because we're just used to like do more, do harder, be stronger, but that is not the goal of rehabbing your core system after having a baby. The goal is coordination of that system.
Dude, it totally blew my mind, my first couple sessions, how exhausted I was after my pelvic floor work
Yeah.
because I had to concentrate so freaking hard. I thought I was just going to be like doing 3 sets of 8. You know, when you do like shoulder rehab, you're like, I take my little weight and I like watch TV
Yeah.
and you know what I mean? And it was so much concentration that I had to take breaks, days of breaks in between because I was so tired from like, oh
Yeah.
my God.
It's
And why have
exhausting.
I not ever known how to do this before? Why is it so hard?
Yeah. And that's why I like love sending my pregnant athletes to a pelvic floor physical therapist before, because then they get that dialed in initially and then they can practice that during pregnancies. And then postpartum, it's just a little bit more natural than trying to learn like a whole new brain thing when your brain is already like not working that well because you're not sleeping and you have a human around you all the time. So like there's a lot we can do proactively, and then there's a lot we can do in response to symptoms. It is never too late to improve your
So my
symptoms.
next question.
Here we are. I feel like I've had these conversations just a couple times in my life. You know, but yeah, it's never too late to rehab. So whether you had a baby like 2 months ago or 2 years ago or 20 years ago, you can make a lot of improvements to how your core system operates. And that's both, again, that's diastasis, that's pelvic pain, that's incontinence, that's prolapse. We can make improvements. It might not be 100%, but can it be better? Yes. And that is what we have to focus on.
I did. Go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to, highlight that to, if you had a baby 20 years ago, it's just not too late. It's never too late. And I did want to ask you too, Brianna, if you think that there are cases in which people are going to need surgical intervention where it's not going to be, they've gone as far as they can with PT and they're still experiencing things that are altering their life and they're not being able to live their fullest life with these symptoms.
Yes, absolutely. And I hate that there is so much shame around surgical choices because sometimes, like, we have medical intervention for a reason. Like with any surgery, if you can go in fully informed, understanding what recovery looks like, what the procedure is like, and like your risk factors and all of those things, and what you can do to set yourself up for the best possible recovery, I think it's a great choice. And I think that it has to be really embraced choice for people who do choose surgery, choice or circumstance. Like if that is the road that they're on, there's no shame there. I would always encourage you to expire like your rehab, learn as much about your body as possible so you're going into surgery with like your best baseline, right? Like you're going in, you understand how your core system works, so then that's going to make your recovery better.
Yeah, that's, I mean, as long as you have a good baseline, that sets you up for like success in the future. Well, this has been incredibly insightful.
You are so lucky. You better sit in your luckiness.
Yeah.
And just smile about how lucky you are that you get to talk to people like this. Because this girl is doing the thing that is like making the difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're
seeing such a generational shift. And like, I knew that I wasn't alone 9 years ago. I knew that like I had so many peers as like fellow people that were like, yeah, we're still working out. Like, I wasn't like weird. There was a lot of us, but there wasn't a lot of good information for people like me as an athlete and as a coach. And now there is. And like, that's something that I think will continually serve the generations to come. Is there wasn't information and now we have good information. And as that information changes, like that's a good thing. We're moving that dial forward so that, you know, we know how to navigate that messy middle.
It's about freaking time, women's health
Yeah.
issues. It's about freaking time,
That is.
honestly. Brianna, speaking of all of that good information, where can our listeners connect with you? Where can they find you? And like, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, well, you can go to my website. It's briannabattles.com. Instagram is brianna.battles. The brand page is at pregnant.postpartum.athlete. I have a podcast. It's called the Practice Brave Podcast, and I cover a variety of topics that are related to that lifetime of athleticism, a lot of times with a focus around training during pregnancy and postpartum and beyond. So those are the main ways to contact me. And then I have a variety of programs. I have a pregnancy program called the Pregnant Athlete Training Program. I have a postpartum program, which is an 8-week postpartum athlete training program. And then I like to call this like my gold standard program is my coaching certification for coaches, practitioners, and all of those who kind of want to become who they needed and be a solid resource for people in their online or local communities to become certified and really qualified to help this this population of female athletes that is only continuing to grow. So I'm really proud of all of those programs because they are doing the work and putting it out there, and I'm grateful for everybody who's supported this like grassroots effort.
As you should be, because not only are you providing this information for women, but also empowering other, practitioners to empower themselves and spread it along so that you're touching more people with all of this great information. So I can't honestly thank you enough for the work that you've been doing because it's so incredibly important.
Well, thank you guys for having me and helping me get this word out there. Like that's how all of this has grown, is just by people being like, "Hey, that seems interesting." Like, yeah, what she said, and like you help amplify that voice.
She said.
And I really appreciate that.
I love it. Thank you, Brianna.